Debbie McCoy's condo complex has crumbling foundations. She's been pushing for testing for years and says this is a necessity.
Once we learn what the percent, the threshold is for how much is too much, then we can free up all those homes and they no longer have the stigma, having trace amounts of parasite.
Hello, my name's Debbie McCoy, and I'm the founder of the Women's Working Group that Mary Ann Williams coined the Concrete Queens. The name stuck and for a while was a household name for those affected by crumbling concrete. I'll begin with the introductions. We'll start with Michelle Burnham. Michelle,
Hello,
tell
everyone.
the audience who you are and a little bit about yourself.
My name is Michelle Burnham. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical Engineering and Material Science, and a Master's of Aeronautical Science with a specialization in Space Studies. I am also a victim of crumbling concrete.
We have Mary Ann Williams. She was our Public Relations Officer. This is our engineer. Sue is our contractor. But Mary Ann, give the audience a little bit about yourself.
And I helped a lot with getting the news people to all the meetings. And I helped Tim Heim and Debbie and all the people that ran the coalition keep up to date. I filled in their inboxes with a lot of emails. And I was a stay-at-home mom, and my 3 kids were all grown, so I had lots of time. I did it 3 or 4 hours every morning. And I was also a victim.
Here we are in our basement again, starting to leak. Crumbling concrete. And you get the effervescence, and then you get the mold. Water's streaming in these cracks here. This is how we live in our house, middle class.
And we had our house repaired in 2019, and we're just moving on with our lives now. But I still feel like I have to help a little bit. And thank you.
Sue?
My name is Sue Stebbins. When I found out I had a crumbling foundation, I was working as a litigation paralegal. My home was also fixed in 2019 under the Connecticut program. And my law career was kind of winding down as my partners that I was working for were retiring. And I ended up working for a contractor that fixes foundations now, so.
And glaringly missing is our matriarch, Linda Toflowski. I know you hear that name a lot. She was what they referred to as patient zero. She was the first homeowner to present herself not only to the concrete company and her contractor, but also to the Department of Consumer Protection in 2001, and also to the Attorney General's office in 2002. And then we're also missing the first select woman, Christina Malhouse. She was a former first select woman in Willington. She got us all concrete rings. And so I'm wearing this in her spirit as well. She's still with us, though. Okay. So the Concrete Queens were established in March 2017, one month after the February 2017 large public hearing where I met both Linda and Mary Ann Williams. Mary Ann and Jim sat right next to myself and my husband, Dave McCoy. In 2017, we took a few field trips to places we had heard used Modus concrete. We made it a point to learn as much as we could by asking lots of questions, keeping our ears to the rails, and doing research online. We visited Yukon, several commercial buildings in Tolland, and one elementary school, Birch Grove. In 2017, we had the core 4 members, myself, a researcher, multitasker, Linda, patient zero, who had the history of this crisis since the mid-1990s, Marianne Williams, who had been doing the public outreach for the coalition, and Sarah Reba, another researcher who could find a needle in a haystack, and our go-to person who attended most of the CROG meetings in 2017. By May 2017, I had created 3 posters of Connecticut, Canada, and Ireland, with a historical 4-page document on the back side of each posters. Once I created the posters, I brought them to Staples and had them scale them down to flyer size. Linda and I spent 4 hours highlighting every flyer for each of the 3 countries times 200. Together, we brought them to the LOB, Legislative Office Building, where we would later make several trips out to the LLB for public hearings, signing of bills, bringing literature such as flyers and letters we had written to the Attorney General. I also wrote a story, No Place Like Home, and sent it to 60 Minutes. The year 2018 was the year of the Concrete Queen. We were fortunate to have the president of the coalition, CCACB, Tim Heim, who blew all the doors down that were closed in the past to Linda Tofolowski. Tim made a ruckus when needed and put folks on blast who ignored our crisis. This made it possible for us to walk through the doors to educate town leaders, legislators, department commissioners, attorney general, and our governor. Everything we did, we shared on Facebook on the coalition site to inform the homeowners. In 2018, we held weekly meetings at my home, and the deal was if you came to my house for a meeting, you would need to bring an offering to the table. My entire dining room table, every inch, was filled with 58 file folders of information. When I founded the CQs, I call them, I had 12 folders, and inside of a year, I had 58. We gave interviews, went on field trips, and then we met a few new members. Michelle Burnham was our first addition to the Core 4, an engineer who knew her stuff. Marianne and myself met Michelle at Rockville High School condo meeting and listened to Michelle speak about some of her concerns. Michelle eagerly joined us late 2017. Next, we met Christina Beebe Malhouse, who was the former First Selectwoman of Wellington. She had so much knowledge of the quarry in her hometown, which helped us do much of the research. Then we met Lynn Morrison, a realtor from Bolton, who made a few posts on Facebook, and we knew we needed a realtor to round us off. So in April 2018, we approached Lynn and asked her to join us. She helped us learn about the foreclosures that were happening throughout the affected area and were areas where that had developments of affected homes. Finally, in August 2018, we met Sue Stebbins, a paralegal who soon became a contractor after the repairs to her foundations were complete. We almost had a well-rounded concrete team. We just needed a structural engineer, Ralph Tullis, a geologist photographer, Nick Scaglione, a building official, Dennis Malkovich, a Yukon engineer, DOT, James Mahoney, and legal expertise, Richard Maloney, along with a trusted representative, Jeff Curry, and Senator Saad Anwar, and a trusted reporter, Carolyn Lumsden. All of the above came to be known as our honorary concrete queens. We became the legislative arm of the coalition. If Tim needed answers, he knew who to reach out to. Most of the time it was Linda or Marianne and Jim Williams. In June 2018, I was asked, along with Tim Heim, president of CCACB, and volunteer board member of CIFSIC, Don Poulin, to address the federal delegation along with U.S. Secretary of HUD, Ben Carson, about FEMA and the need for bank forbearance, casualty loss, and financial aid. In August 2018, a highlight of our advocating was being invited to speak with the Attorney General, officials, and the Department of Consumer Protection officials. We spoke about acid runoff from stockpiles at the quarry and about the soft powers the office carried. There was an investigation in 2015 to 2016 where testing at the quarry took place and learned that the quarry had 2.542% of peritite. We wanted to make certain an AVC was signed each year. AVC being an assurance of voluntary agreement not to sell the aggregate for use in concrete. And myself, Marianne, Michelle, we just thought we were the it girls in town, because we took the elevator all the way to the top floor for the Attorney General's office. And much like when I went to my son's modification meetings with the school teachers, they would have the superintendent, the principal, the vice principal, all the teachers, and me. And it would be a whole round table of all these professionals and me asking for modifications. So when we walked in, we thought we were meeting with one person, and there they were, a whole table full of attorneys. And so I looked at Marianne and she said, "Debbie, you got this. Go, girl." And so I said to everybody, okay, nobody get angry, okay? We're gonna all be kind here, right? Yep. And so I started speaking, and then they opened their mouths. And that was it for Lynn Morrison. She was like, "Nope, I'm not having it." And she just let them, and we let her go because they deserved it. But anyways, and it was because they were talking about, well, when your house burns down, we're lucky we have insurance. Okay, that's great. But the insurance cut us all off at the knees because the state allowed the insurance to write off foundations and offload the mitigation onto the homeowner. So by September 2018, after reaching out to Nick Scaglione, we held a meeting in South Windsor with all the town leaders in the affected area, legislators, department heads, and with UConn and Trinity. Nick was the keynote speaker who advised us to include the concrete industry leaders, and they all came. He gave a 2-hour presentation, and we took Nick around to see some of the commercial buildings affected. He stayed for 3 days and spent time at UConn and Trinity College. In October 2018, we learned a big meeting with CIFSIC that condos over 4 units were excluded from the remediation scheme. And so Tim Heim offloaded condos onto me, which resulted in me forming the Condo 5 group. After that, Tim relied on my expertise on condos, and he even came to my house for a meeting where upon entering my dining room, he stated, this is a library, and you're an encyclopedia." A compliment from Tim Heim made my day. Something to note, in 2018, both CCACB and the CCQs, Connecticut Concrete Queens, began helping advocating for the affected homeowners en masse. We went to meetings, we shared publications, we testified, we showed up for our sister state, that homes showing the signs of deterioration as Connecticut homes were. The year 2019 was huge. The doors to CIFSIC opened for a remediation scheme that rivals all other schemes, led by a man who is firm, with his compassion and his convictions, to fix as many affected homes with the limited resources available. We had meetings with CROG, CIFSIC, CCAB, and CCQ. We watched the first house lifted and repaired, a miracle to see after 4 years of fighting to get to this point.
As many as 5,000 homes in 41 Connecticut communities are believed to have crumbling foundations. This Tolland home is the first to be fixed with taxpayer money.
All right.
The McCloskeys say their long nightmare is over.
There were a lot of tears and a lot of fear.
18 months ago, when Kevin and Ashling were looking to put their house on the market, their realtor urged them to check their foundation first.
There was an enormous crack here that had spider webs and kind of road maps.
Behind these finished basement walls, the problem was even worse.
When the walls came down, they were completely crumbling. They were bowing in.
We just felt kind of lost that we'd lost this asset of ours, and it was basically worthless at that point.
The McCloskeys were the first family chosen to receive funding from a captive insurance program created by lawmakers last year and launched in January to help homeowners. It's paid with bonds and a $12 surcharge on Connecticut property taxes.
It was amazing. It was actually, we didn't know that we would be the first.
It was a very badly impaired foundation. Had this continued, this poor family, the McCloskeys, would have eventually had to leave their home.
A contractor lifted the home onto blocks and poured a new foundation while the McCloskeys say the captive paid 100% of the cost to replace their foundation, $175,000, there were certain costs it did not cover, such as renting another home while the work was taking place and putting in new steps. That totaled $5,000. And their finished basement is now bare.
There's been some challenges, but at the end of the day, we're here and we're delighted to be here. It's really ended up on a high.
I was busy with the Condo 5 who met monthly and sometimes weekly at my home. We attended public hearings and held meetings with town leaders. The Concrete Queens and CCACB Coalition together organized the first international meeting that included Ireland. I had testified at the LOB on February 2017 that homes in Canada, USA, and Ireland were crumbling to the ground due to iron sulfide minerals in the aggregate used in concrete. And now, through a little luck, perseverance, and a GoFundMe, we were able to bring 3 countries together. July 2019, Linda, myself, and Tim Heim were invited to the governor's office for signing of Public Act 19-192. That allowed condo structures over 4 units to avail the remediation scheme. And it also brought about a bank loan program to bridge the costs not covered by the remediation scheme for ancillary costs. October 2019, we held the 4 coalition, 3 country, 2 state, 1-day event with Laval and Trinity colleges at Ellington High School. Attended were legislators, federal delegates, town leaders. Tim and I spoke at the conference along with the Canadian Coalition leaders, the Ireland Coalition leaders. Laval and Trinity shared the research up to that point. October 2019 to January 2020, I was appointed to the Working Quarry Group. Linda Tofolowski attended a few of the meetings. She had to drive Miss Daisy. I had her drive me all the time to Hartford. I don't like driving to Hartford. But anyways, I was appointed, as was Senator Anwar, a Democrat, Representative Tim Eckert, a Republican. We had an engineer on the member panel, Jim Mahoney. We had former president of HBRA on the panel. And then we had Telcon, Suzio, and O&G Concrete Industry on the panel. From January to March 2020, the Condo 5 prepared testimony regarding the bank loan program, which was enacted and condos were included onto the program. Gretchen and I testified at the LOB. It would be the last time going to the LOB. COVID hit, and for 1 year, things seemed to slow down. But by 2021, things were back to hustle and bustle. The Working Quarry Group's recommendations were adopted in Public Act 21-120. More funding, the sunset date was removed, and more houses were being remediated. June 2021, the Concrete Queens got together in solidarity with Ireland as they had one of the biggest marches in Dublin rallying against the 90-10 scheme. We paid for a poster to be made. Everyone gathered for the poster, and from June 2021 until present, I have been advocating for Ireland. 2021, the Concrete Queens and the Condo 5 group met at Wellington Ridge condominium. Sue and the company she works for lifted the very first condo building that was funded through CIFSIC. So we all went. The Condo 5 group was there. The Concrete Queens were there. I contacted Congressman Courtney. He was there. Yukon was there. I mean, so many people, and the news was there as well. January 2022, I was awarded a state citation at my home by a bipartisan group of legislators. For many years of volunteer work, I accepted it on behalf of the Concrete Queens and our efforts to date. February 2022, I was awarded a congressional record from Congressman Courtney, who read it on the floor of Congress. March 2022, I addressed the European Parliament in Brussels via Zoom due to COVID. November 2022, I, along with a team of geologists, traveled to Ireland to educate them and inform them on peritite. For many years, they blamed continuous expansive cracking on mica. However, mica doesn't cause hardened concrete to crack. What does is internal sulfite attack from reactive pyrite and reactive peritite. January 2023 to September 2023, I wrote a 150-page Ireland story on the precipice, 20 years of noncompliance. March 2024, I attended ISCAR International Conference in Canada, along with 11 countries and geologists who came to inform through 40 presentations. November 2024, I was interviewed by CBC for a television show on public TV. They informed me it had to be educational and entertaining. So I'm doing my best to include a little bit of entertaining, like when I told you guys that the camera does add more than 10 pounds. I'm telling you, it adds 20. Every time I look at it and see my shows, I go, oh my God, 20 pounds. I'm not kidding. December, I filmed my first show, which was the introduction. January, I filmed my second show, Public Acts. February, I filmed my third show, Public Acts Continued. March, I filmed my fourth show, Mass Affected Homeowners. And today's my fifth show, The Concrete Queens. Reflecting on the 8 years of friendship with these ladies has brought great comfort to a crisis that never had to happen, a latent harm whereby the actual harmful chain of events was set in motion years before it was discovered. But it did happen, and we were fortunate to have a president of a coalition that didn't take no for an answer, who opened doors closed, who allowed us to spread our wings and be the legislative arm to the coalition. We were lucky to have great legislators in the state of Connecticut and town leaders who did what FEMA refused, and that was to get to the bottom of the economic impact, and an AG and DCP commissioner who did an investigation, to have 2 universities researching peritite, all the ducks lined up for the perfect storm, and then from advocating and pulling our resources together, the ducks were lined up to confront the storm head on, and the results is public acts that have helped, not hindered, a remediation scheme that is successful with over 1,000 homes repaired to date, and a town tax bases restored, and also the real estate market restored. Advocating has opened a whole new world, and through the backing and support of these concrete queens, we have now become not only a household name in Connecticut and Mass, but also worldwide. So that was my introduction to today. And what I'd like to do is talk to you about the contracting part of this crisis. Because let's face it, we are so lucky that we have some really good contractors. I mean, really good. And, you know, once we got like over 4 or 5, because in the beginning, Don Childry had the majority of homes that he was working from in the South Windsor area. But as the crisis grew, more and more contractors were involved, and the prices actually came down instead of going up. What they're finding in Ireland is the prices are being jacked up so high. I mean, your team needs to go to Ireland. I'm not kidding, girl. They have thousands and thousands and thousands of homes. We've repaired 1,000. And, you know, when we first learned about it, they said we had the propensity of 38,000 homes affected. But what Michael McGlaris, the superintendent of SIFSIC, found through his data gathering was that we're really looking at more like 4,000 or 5,000, not 38,000. So that's good. It's within our means to wrap our arms around this long tail issue. So one other thing before I have Sue take it. When we first learned about this, the state said it was only in the northeast corner of Connecticut. What it actually is it's the northeast corner, but it's also the capital region. The northeast region has maybe 6 or 7 towns, but the capital region has 24 of the 38. And the capital region also is the most populated region in Connecticut. So CROG, which is known for Capital Region Council of Government, they did an outstanding job by having all the town leaders from all these towns meet regularly. In 2016, they started to meet. By 2017, they were meeting every month. And they're the ones that got to the bottom of the economic impact of this crisis. So we really benefited by having the Capital Region get involved in this. So anyway, Sue, take it away. I see you have some samples. Maybe you can talk to the audience about what those glaring, bronzy, shimmery things are in that aggregate.
So this piece is actually from a house in Coventry, Connecticut. It was just pulled out yesterday. This is what this is a classic example of the Connecticut aggregate. You can see all the brown pieces. You can probably notice that they sparkle in the light. They call it the fool's gold. And it's pretty much, if you pull a house apart in Connecticut, this is what you're going to see. All the brown speckles.
That's what they call the removed defective concrete.
So we did 2 homes in Massachusetts last year. And in Massachusetts, they thought that the affected homes up there originally were affected by our quarry. But then the problem started moving into central Massachusetts, which was out of the area of Modus Concrete. It was much too far for them to be transporting concrete up there. And this is a home, this one actually here, that we fixed last year in Rutland, Massachusetts. And you can see that there's a terrific difference in the look of it. This has got all the brown. This, you have to really look closely to see the pyrrhotite in it. It's kind of like a granity looking stone that just has veins of the pyrrhotite going through it. I know it's going to be really hard to see on camera, so I brought this piece here. But this is what it looks like here. It's like a granity type stone, but you can see how it's got all these rust spots in it. That's what the stone looks like on a much smaller scale. This is a second home that we did in Rutland, and you can see this is a 10-year older home, so you can see the rusty spots in it a little better on this piece. But we are currently fixing a home in Wichington, and you can see this looks more like the Connecticut, which I found interesting. And when Nick Scaglione came to talk to Massachusetts homeowners in Auburn, I believe it was, he was convinced that there was another quarry in Massachusetts. Right now, Massachusetts has not identified the quarry other than that it's in central Massachusetts. This home in Wichington is in central Massachusetts, but it's right on the New Hampshire border. So it's kind of questionable that the offending company that was pouring the concrete in central Mass, Wichington is actually out of their service area as well. I just found it interesting that the aggregate, from my unpracticed eye, looks more like the Connecticut quarry than it does the Central Mass quarry, which leads me to believe that there may in fact be another quarry. And we've actually, UConn came and picked up a whole bunch of samples, which they're gonna core and send out to Nick. And hopefully he'll be able to tell if it's the same.
Do a petrographic analysis on it. Yeah, as a matter of fact, that Rutland home, I was telling folks about in the last episode with the Mass homeowners, I was fortunate enough to ask Sam Adams to give me some of that removed defective concrete out of Rutland, and I sent it to Nick, and I noticed right away it looked like that.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I had some removed concrete from Wellington, which the Wellington condo, I think it had the worst condos in all of Connecticut that were affected, that you guys did. And so I said, let me have that concrete to send with the aggregate from Rutland. And also I had aggregate from Holland too sent to him. So I had the Rutland, the Holland, and Wellington. And I sent it to him, and he looked at it and immediately sent me a reply, this is not the same host rock. It's not the same aggregate. And what people, and I repeat it every time I come on this show, aggregate is the original sin. It's not the block, it's not the block mold, it's not the foundation, it's not the installers, it's not the block. The aggregate is the original sin. So looking at that, you could tell, and I could tell, and I'm no geologist or photographer, but Nick took it and he was convinced through his analysis. And I had just sent it to him in September, and then me, you, and Nick went and spoke in Auburn, and I loved it because he, told the audience, you've got a quarry here in Mass. So, because what irked me was that radius that Mass had from Stafford. And they said, okay, we're only reimbursing homes that are within the radius of Stafford. Well, what happens to the rest of the state that's getting it from Draycott, which is, isn't that bordering New Hampshire as well?
That's much further east than Central Mass, too.
And Wichita. And I murdered the names of the Mass towns, so I'm glad you said it for me and not me. But yes, the towns that you're describing in Rutland and Holland, it's too far for the Stafford Concrete Company to travel. It's out of the 40-mile radius. So when I seen the commission that got together in 2019 for Mass, and them talking about this 20-mile radius, I was like, what the heck? And so when Nick confirmed that at that meeting in 2022, I knew that debunked their theory that it was all coming from the Stafford. Mm-hmm. And so they do have it worse because they've got it coming from Connecticut. They've got it coming from their own quarries and potentially maybe even from New Hampshire. So thank you very much for bringing in those samples for us, Sue, because you said that's from Coventry?
This
that
one here, yeah, just
Jesus,
yesterday.
That looks like the Wellington aggregate.
That is. It's Coventry, Connecticut. It's a couple towns.
But I mean, it looks like what you pulled out of the Wellington
the condos.
Yeah, it's got a lot of peritite in it.
It was.
Sue's company also did my daughter's house.
This was actually a sister wall. It's a much older house that had cinder blocks. And, sometime in the early 90s, somebody put in a sister wall. And unfortunately used Modus concrete. So the sister wall was failing as well as the original wall. But
also something I want to touch base on because you're the first person that told me this. Nick Haney mentioned it in the last episode, but you were the one that brought that to my attention. When my husband and I discovered my daughter's home had it, we had passed by the utility room, the only place where it wasn't finished. Mm-hmm. And you could see the hairline cracking, and when the structural engineer came out, his biggest concern was the chimney. But I'm like, I see homes worse cracking, but they didn't have anything covering the walls. When you ever took whatever it was on my foam board, foam board, is that what it's called?
Yep.
When you took that down and showed the wall, I sent that to my geologist friends in England, DePonjana in Pennsylvania, who did a wonderful report on my daughter's home. And when I sent that picture to him, he said, I got to include that in my report. I couldn't believe how bad her home was deteriorated.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people think their home is fine. Oh, we just got hairline. Yeah, pull that foam board off. Yeah, I thought that was sheetrock. It's called foam board.
The pink stuff is,
Yeah,
is
that
a
was-
foam board insulation. Yeah.
Okay.
The sheetrock's the white stuff that goes on
Yeah,
the outside.
so that goes over it because I never saw pink stuff. I only saw
Yeah,
white.
no, that's just like insulation.
Okay.
Insulation for it.
And that, what does that do? That traps the moisture in, doesn't it?
It does, yes. And I did that video years ago in Willington where I think it was building 4. They had every single basement was finished in a different way.
Yeah.
Some were unfinished. Some just had the regular fiberglass insulation. Some had the foam board, and some had the plastic vapor barrier. And you went from unit to unit to unit, and it was different levels of deterioration.
Which one
based
was the
on,
worst?
The plastic vapor barrier.
Really?
Followed by the pink insulation, the pink foam board. Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
And actually, the house that we're doing in Winchendon now had the vapor barrier as well, and the whole basement was finished, other than a small section where the bulkhead was, and they were horrified to see how bad it was under there. And the concrete was wet when we took that vapor barrier off. I mean, it just traps all that moisture in there. And as you know, moisture is, death to
Makes
bear
it crack
paint.
more.
I hear people talk a lot about different types of foundations. There's the crawl foundation. There's the Connecticut foundations, which are part below ground and part above ground. Is it correct that foundations are about 10 feet tall?
I believe they have to be 8 foot
8 foot
tall,
tall?
to be considered living space. In a raised ranch or a split level, the walls are usually only 4 feet because it's half wall and half framing, wood framing.
Okay.
So there's all different. There are slab on grade homes.
Yes, that's another foundation type,
Which
slab on grade.
is really terrible if you have a crumbling foundation, because everything on that slab, I mean, just think of everything that's on your main floor, your kitchens, your bathrooms, your flooring, everything sits on that concrete, and all of that has to come out to repair.
And I'd never heard of slab on grade
horrible,
until
yeah.
I heard about what was happening with the PUDs, planned unit development, that Michael McGlaris allowed slab on grade as well. That was the first time I ever heard it. But when I was looking up foundation types, that was one of them, slab on grade. And then I'll look through my papers while we're talking here, but there were a few others. And the ones in Ireland are different from their foundations. They call it a strip foundation. Have you ever heard of a strip foundation?
Do they actually have basements there? I don't.
No. So it's like, it's buried, but they're block foundations buried in the ground. I've never even, heard of that type. So I'm good at advocating about the iron sulfide minerals, what coalitions should be doing, but actually understanding a foundation in Ireland is a little tough for me. They talk about bison slabs, and I'm like, bison slabs? The only thing I know that is a bison is a bison. So what's a bison slab, you know? So I figured maybe I would ask you about it. But what are the foundation types in Connecticut?
There's the slab on grade, which is just, there's a footing and what they call a frost wall. It's a very short concrete wall, and then your floor is poured on top of that frost wall. I mean, think about your garage, okay? Your garage, you walk in, it's got a concrete floor.
Yeah.
Probably your breezeway too. You walk in and it's concrete underneath there. There are whole houses that are built like that. They have no cellar, they have no crawl space. It's just that small frost wall and
Where do they put their heating unit and all that?
They usually have a
oil
closet
tank.
or something like that.
Or in the garage.
They what?
Yeah.
Oh, in the garage?
Garage or a closet or a little utility room.
So you don't have to lift those types of homes, do you? What do you do? How do you?
They are very difficult. There's actually a higher pay rate from CIFSIC for those. only because there is so much involved. Like I said,
Yeah.
your kitchen is all sitting on that, so that means all your kitchen cabinets have to come out. You know, anything that's sitting on the
Oh
floor,
my
you lose
word!
all
I've
your
never.
flooring. You lose your bathroom. You have a toilet in there. You have a bathtub. You have a shower unit.
More stuff has to come out.
And a lot of that stuff can't be saved. I mean,
Yeah.
think about your shower unit. You know, usually it's all one piece or
Yeah.
it's all tiled in. There's a lot that can't be saved in a slab-on-grade
And so
house.
those are ancillary costs that the homeowner actually gets because
the
SIPSIC only
program-
covers concrete.
Well, slab-on-grade's a little different, and that's why the rate is higher. They do cover certain items that they wouldn't in a normal house, only because it's the living space, whereas a basement is not living space.
Right.
Even if you're using it as living space, I mean, we've gone to a lot of houses where, you know, people have a second bedroom down there, they have a media room or something like that. They lose all of that, and the program doesn't cover it because it's not technically living space. Whereas a slab-on-grade house, that is your living space. That is your
Right.
only living space.
Wow. What about when you lift and some of these houses are old? I mean, concrete basements became popular in the 1950s. And over time, building regulations change. And like my son's condo doesn't have, like the law is now, if you have a basement, you know, they had a little bedroom down there, but there was no door to get out.
Yeah.
When you repair houses like that, do they have to incorporate the new laws?
They do.
They do?
If they want to use that as a bedroom, they absolutely do.
They have to have an
Doorway
out,
Yeah.
a way out.
Well, you know, even on your daughter's house, we put the little
bulkhead
dog house
thing,
out
the-
because they know
yeah.
eventually that they want to use that as a bedroom down there.
Okay.
So
you call it
that's-
a dog house or a bulkhead?
Well, no, the
skate
bulkhead.
hatch.
The bulkhead is the one that you open with the two doors.
Okay.
Which I believe she had before.
Yeah.
But
So what?
but we call it the dog house because it's actually a a walk-in door, as opposed to walk down the stairs.
Yeah.
It's an actual physical door that you can walk in and go down.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting.
But yes, we ran into that a lot at the condos because people were using their basement as an extra bedroom, and the building inspector there said, absolutely not. You cannot.
do it.
You can't do it. There has to be 2 points of egress. And when you only have one, then it's not a legal living space.
How many times does a building official come to the site?
There's
When you pour the footings?
a few of the towns, Stafford, for example, they want to come out before we even start and take a look around, and they will tell us any issues that we'll have. Like, for example, a lot of the older homes, when you walk down your cellar, they're supposed to be 36 inches from the bottom step to the wall. And a lot of these older homes, from the 80s and whatnot, they don't have that extra space.
Yeah.
So what the towns make us do is we have to save those stairs and put them back in, because if we put new stairs in, then they consider it a renovation and we have to make it to code. And the only way we can make it to code is by moving those stairs upstairs in the house, and you're losing more square footage up there. So it's good that they're letting us put it back the way it was. So a lot of the building inspectors like to come out and say, make sure you save that and make sure you save that, and it's got to go back in as is, or I'm going to make you bring it up to code. But for the most part, they've been very understanding. Even in Massachusetts, where they're not used to it, they were very amenable to not making us bring everything up to code. I mean, there were safety issues.
Yeah.
They're
of
always going to
course.
make us, but things that are never going to, affect anything one way or
Right.
the other. They were really good about, but inspections. So some towns, they want to come beforehand. Some towns just say, go ahead. There's a footing inspection before you pour footings. They want to come and look at the ground, make sure it's on stable ground, make sure, the forms are set up. They want to come inspect walls, make sure they have the appropriate amount of rebar in it. Then they come and inspect footing drains and seal coating, because seal coating is code in Connecticut. We have a guy that comes in and sprays like a rubberized coating on the outside of the wall. And then that's pretty much it until the final CO. And then they look at everything else at that point. And mostly at that point, it's safety issues. You know, you got to make sure you have working smoke detectors down there, and you know, make sure the wiring's all done correctly. Everything's put back the way it was supposed to. Rutland's a little different. They have a, Massachusetts, I should say, is different. They have a building inspector, but they also have an electrical inspector and a plumbing inspector and a fire marshal. So you have to make appointments with all these different, you know, officials.
Yeah. Wow.
But they do different, you know. So going back to Connecticut, though, there are inspections that our subcontractors have to take out as well. So like our electrician has to take out his license, you know, he has to take out his permit to do what he needs to do.
Okay.
And the building inspector will come and inspect his things as well, and the plumber as well. If we're putting in, if it had a bathroom down there and we're putting a bathroom back in, that would be something that would be inspected as well. That's pretty much it, though. It's but for the foundation part of it, those are the main inspections: footings, walls, seal coating, footing drains, and then the final CO.
So when a home inspector goes to a home, do they know all about those things that you've just described? Do they know about footings and walls and everything to look for in a foundation? Because what I've learned and what you've learned, and we've both pointed out to CIFSIC, is that, and CIFSIC created an incredible program to certify home inspectors through a program that Kevin Miller teaches. But home inspections, we all think home inspection, and that includes a foundation. But a lot of folks are finding out now, after the fact, that they purchased a home from out of state, didn't know about the issue here in Connecticut, and they buy the house for market value. Many of them buy it over market value, and are, what is the term, over price listed.
Yeah.
And then they get a rainstorm and they go down to their basement and they pull the sheetrock off to see what's going on, and their basement's flooded and they see these horrible cracks, and then they ring, yeah, I want to get on the remediation scheme, and they get a, no, you can't, because you didn't get a foundation. Well, I kept saying, get a home inspection, don't waive the home inspection. But what I was taught was, for misrepresenting what I was saying, get a home inspection, don't waive it, was it's not just a home inspection. It's actually additional money. It's a foundation inspection. So not everybody gets trained through CIFSIC.
No.
So there's still homeowner inspectors that are still passing them off, not saying anything to the homeowner, not saying you need to get a foundation inspection. Look, I just seen, like I used my example, the gentleman that did our home inspection, we had a horizontal crack at my son's condo, and it was about this long, and we saw cracks like in the corners, you know. But he said, oh, this is all just settling cracks. And I said, but what's that? I never seen a horizontal crack in my life in a foundation, right? And he said, well, let's just get a Windsor probe test done. That'll be an additional $400. We have to have an engineering firm to come out. And they came out, and it looked like they were shooting a bullet into the wall. And they tested for strength, compressive strength. And they said, oh, the PSI is low, but it's still within the means. And that's why Linda lost her case, because they tested for the compressive strength, and they said, oh, the walls still have strength. Even though her home was condemned, even though her home was like Mary Ann's, yours is one of the worst. I never seen such scary sludge and redness,
Yeah,
you know,
mold and everything.
the rust and the mold and everything like that. So it just makes me wonder about why hasn't Connecticut made it a law, A, that all home inspectors, no matter where you are in the state, because we're finding out Darien, these towns down here have it. So I'm just wondering why they haven't. And the other thing that you and I have both perpetuated, why hasn't the Connecticut Realtor Association, why haven't they mandated that in their advisory
They
that they
came up
have?
with that wonderful form that spells it all out, that says, if you do not get it inspected by a, CIFSIC approved or a structural engineer on the CROG list, you will not be eligible for funding. They came up with that form, and they said,
and yet they don't make it mandatory.
We will give this form out, but then, you watch the video that they put on it.
It's just voluntary.
We have this form, but it's a voluntary thing. So that's great that you came up with this wonderful form that really you're working for your client. I mean, this is your client. They should be more than informed on everything about crumbling foundations. But we've been to several homes where people have said to us, well, no, my realtor never mentioned it to me.
Or they waived the inspections.
Or they got just a home inspection, and the home inspector didn't say, oh, well, you really should have this inspection too.
And there's only like 6 or 7 houses that I know of to date that realtors are advising the homeowner, here's that advisory. And what I found interesting, because it does look all real and good, but what it does say is a visual inspection is just a statement of condition at the moment of time of inspection, not necessarily a prediction of the future of the foundations. Claim funds may be available through CIFSIC for residential dwellings purchased on or after February 1st, which meet certain eligibility and professional inspection requirements. That's where that kind of gets me. Why doesn't it say foundation inspection, and that it's a separate inspection altogether, And I did find this, because the reason why I was looking this up on foundations is because, Michelle, I remember going to your condo, and this happened at my son's new house that he just purchased. When the home inspector came, he said we couldn't see in the crawl space foundations, the crawl space. And I remember when I went to your condo and you were pointing out the crumbling, the cracks and everything, that they couldn't see in the crawl space or something, the home inspector. I remember you mentioned crawl space. So when I saw this, number 1, slab on grade, then they have post-tension slab foundations, crawl space foundations, block and base foundations, basement foundations, I guess that's Connecticut. And they say that basement foundations are better for colder climates where the ground regularly freezes, and slab on grade foundations would not work well. So I was like, oh boy, all those PUDs have slab on grade foundations. But crawl space foundation, an average crawl space clearance is 2 feet between the ground and your home, and you can easily crawl underneath, hence the name crawl space. But there are definitely many homes built with both much shorter and taller clearance distances between the ground and the home. I figured I would bring that up, the slab on grade.
My mom had one that was all dirt, and they called it a potato cellar. It's built in the 1800s.
Yeah.
So we have 5 minutes here left. And Marianne, I did bring up your home foundation for a reason, because I remember, and I have it in my book, pictures of it. It said, what did you have written on the walls?
Oh, help us.
Yeah, help us.
Please help us.
Yeah.
Please help us.
I spray painted it.
And then the contractor wrote, we're here to help, or something like that.
Yeah,
on
they
the wall.
answered me. And
I
George Colley
thought that
down
was
there
great.
one time.
You and Pam. Pam, she has a long name. I can't I'm not even going to
I know
pronounce
who you're
it.
talking about. Well, it begins
Pam.
with an M, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is horror story. Like, it was sludge, orange sludge, and it was all over the ground, mixed in with the white effervescence.
Oh, yeah.
And
we had that behind our boiler.
And it was like
flooding the boiler.
Oh my God. I once went into a condo up in Ryfield too. And this elderly woman, I knocked on the door and I asked her, would it be all right if I came in and looked at your condos? Because I've seen many condos. Michelle and I brought contractors. We were doing what the association should have been doing, but we were bringing contractors to get quotes. I brought the team that Jeff used to be on. I brought, Michelle, you brought New City. We brought the people that do the walls that are concrete, the fiberglass, John Sharon. So we brought a lot of people around, but I hadn't seen the condos in Ryfield too. And I was taking pictures and I was walking around the whole place, you know, both of them. And the little lady let me in and I shut her water off because it was running and she must have forgot or didn't know. And I didn't know her story till after. But I said, oh, do you mind if I get some pictures of your foundation? Well, she went downstairs holding her white cat, and there was this much water.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. And the walls were horrific, almost like what the walls looked like in Wellington. Oh. And she happened to be the neighbor of Frank Frisano. And yeah, so he was telling me that once she called the police because she couldn't get her alarm to shut off. She thought it was her radio clock, and she had left a pan on with water, and it was burning. So what I found out was she had dementia, and I could. Being the kind of person I am, I reached out to her relatives and said, listen, this is what she's living in. And she was later put into a place in Bloomfield that deals with people with Alzheimer's. And to this day, I feel bad, but I also feel good knowing that she could have burnt down the condo or whatever. But it was standing water.
Wow.
In there. Nothing sub-pumping the water out, nothing, you know?
Moldy.
And I don't even, seeing my son's condo, the way it was set up, how would you have a sub-pump pumping out water, you know? The configuration, you know what I mean? So I felt bad, and you could tell that water had been there for a long time, and it was affecting the walls, you know? And it had all that white effervescence over the walls. Not every home has it. I mean, I'm sure you've seen quite a few different damages, but yeah, I've heard about effervescence, pop-outs, and of course, the traditional map cracking, pattern cracking, and the width. You know, you can put your hands through like your home. You know, you had little mices coming in and everything
snakes,
like that.
All that stuff, bugs.
Well, we are wrapping it up now. We've got a minute left, but I want to thank Sue Stebbins, Marianne Williams, Michelle Burnham, and my husband for filming, Melanie, who has been the sweetest person ever, who works for the Community Voice channel. And I want to thank the people that tune in to watch this. And that's about it.
Thanks
We're going to
for
wrap
having
it up.
us. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you very much.